Can we give Amanda and Howard another hand for being our amazing first two speakers? If you knew you could not fail, what goal would you set for yourself? Would you set a goal to start a new job? Would you set a goal to travel the world? Would you set a goal to finally eat healthy? What goal would you set for yourself if you knew you couldn't fail? That was the question that my third grade teacher asked us. I'm not sure why she would ask a group of eighth graders or 8-year-olds why we want to picture our lives. But she made us do an exercise that day where we had to write down what goals we had for our lives if we knew we couldn't fail. And that day, I thought, wow, she must be like a genie. If I can write down how many goals and achieve them, I'm not just gonna write down one, I'm not just gonna write down two. I wrote down 3 goals. The first goal, I'm gonna share with you right now. The second goal, I'm gonna share with you in about 5 minutes. And the final goal, I'm gonna share at the very end of the speech. So definitely don't go to the restroom during the end of this. The first goal I shared, and I wrote down that day, was I wanted to be an owner of a multi-million-dollar company. But I wanted the company to do so well that I could afford to fly myself and my team to an island for a week. And that every day we wake up, we would hear the sounds of birds chirping and the running water behind us. That was the dream. That was my first goal. And last week, I accomplished that goal. This is my team, and this is where we stayed for a week. Every day, we heard the birds chirping, and every day, we heard the running waters. But 13 years ago, I didn't think this goal was ever possible. Because 13 years ago, I wasn't waking up to the sounds of birds chirping. I wasn't waking up to the sounds of running water behind us. In fact, I was waking up to gunshots in the middle of the night. And instead of running water, some nights, my parents, we didn't have enough money. So I would wake up and there'd be no water, and someone would cut off our water and electricity. So I would go to school, no shower, no heater, no breakfast. And so I thought, how can you go from this environment here and 13 years later afford for your entire team to go to a paradise like that? That's what I'm gonna share with you today, is what it takes to go from that first picture of waking up in the middle of the night to gunshots to waking up to this paradise here. But it's not about the paradise. It's about being able to take your goals and actually turn them into reality. It took me 20 years to learn what I'm gonna share with you today. But over the next 40 minutes, you're gonna learn all 20 years in 40 minutes. But there is a catch. I've given talks all around the world, over 100 different venues, from 10 people to 10,000 people. And I've learned one thing, which is that some people, they listen, and that's it. Other people, they get their lives transformed. But you wanna know what the difference was? In order to have information equal transformation, you have to have participation. And so, I'm gonna ask you the same question that my teacher asked me when I was 8 years old. What goal would you accomplish if you knew you couldn't fail? So earlier, when you walked in, there's a reason why you have a pen and a paper. I want you to write down that goal. Take a minute. It could be anything. It could be starting your own business. It could be finally asking your boss for a raise. It could be finally starting a new workout routine. It could start running, whatever it is. I want you to take a minute and just write it down. And some of you can write down on your phone. Yes, you can write down on your phone. And some of you, if you want, I think there's some soy sauce over there. You can also write down soy sauce, whatever you want, just write it down. Take a minute, write it down. And once you've written it down, raise your hand just so I know that you've written it down, because we're not gonna move on until everyone has written down at least one thing. Remember, no one's gonna see this. No one except for you. If you want to win the Olympics, you write down you win the Olympics. If you want to go learn how to run a 5K marathon, you write it down. Whatever it is, I want you to write it down, because we're gonna work with this goal for the next 40 minutes. All right, take some more time, guys. When you're done, just quick raise your hands. Once most people have gotten raised their hands, we'll move on and we'll talk about the 4 lessons here. Awesome. Josh, I see your hands there. All right, Inez, I see your hand there. All right, I see your hands there. Okay, I see you guys' hands there. Anyway, all right. I'm gonna give it a couple more seconds for you guys to write down those goals, those dreams. Remember, no one's gonna see this. And imagine if you could not fail, what would you write? All right. Before I tell you how to turn those goals into reality, I want to give thanks to all the volunteers here at Toastmasters because it takes a lot to put on an event like these. And as the previous speakers have spoken, Toastmasters is one of the best investments that we have made. We'll talk more about Toastmasters, but the volunteers, they literally do not get paid to put all this together. So I want to give them a round of applause as well. It's because of volunteers like Scott, like his team, like Emily and so forth that I'm able to speak here today. But before Toastmasters was even possible to me, let's go back in time. Let's go back to a time where I didn't even know what Toastmasters was. My family journey starts in Vietnam. So my family grew up in the time of the Vietnam War. In my family, they were farmers. And oftentimes, their crops would get burnt down during the Vietnam War. Every time they started a business, it would get burnt down. And my family always dreamt about going to a new place. They dreamt about going to this mystical place they've never heard of, never been to, but someone said it was a land of opportunity. In fact, similar to Chinese, in Vietnamese, America translates to the beautiful country. And they thought, we want to go to this beautiful country, this land of opportunity. They imagined it would be just like what they heard about in the radios. It will be like this. They get a house on the beach. They can go surfing every single day. There's literally gold on the floor that you can pick up and go to the bank. They thought, there is so much opportunities here. But when my family finally escaped Vietnam and made it all the way across the ocean on a boat, this is where we landed. Instead of beautiful oceans, there was barbed wires. Instead of a land of opportunity, there's a land of hard work. Because my family were farmers who never went to school, who didn't speak English, they had to take any single kind of job that they could take. It didn't matter if it was for my grandpa learning how to sweep the floors at a school. It didn't matter if my grandma had to wake up at 2 a.m. to go cooking for a military base. It didn't matter if my uncles had to get up at 6 a.m. to travel 3 hours just to do one job and come back another 3 hours. They took whatever job they could get. But it was hard. Because there were so few opportunities, we had to live in a place like this. So imagine a family of 12 fitting into a 1-bedroom, similar to here. In fact, you're so poor that when the windows are broken in, you can't even replace it. This was the type of environment that I grew up in. And to make it even clearer how poor we are, I did not own my first pair of shoes until I was 13. In fact, my shoes were more like these. I remember as a kid, my parents would buy me used shoes from the store, and they would cost about $1 or $2, and they would come broken. But my parents would always buy duct tape. So when I went to school, I would always carry duct tape in my backpack. And so when I would run, and then my shoe would break in the middle of recess. I would literally go in my backpack, take the duct tape my shoes, and continue running. And I kept this going until my shoe was completely made of duct tape. So this, I would consider kind of new, actually. I still have this bad habit today where I wear my shoes until they break down. In fact, you don't have to take my word for it. 2 days ago, my shoe, it was about to break down. So I went to the gym with my trainer, and I asked him, how long do you replace your shoes? And he said 5. It's like, 5 years, right? He was like, no, 5 months. I was like, so I should not be wearing these for 5 years. I was like, no, what are you doing training in 5 years? And so Daniel and I finally went shopping. And so I set up this bad habit. Even though I own new shoes, I still use them for 5 years until they break down. I don't duct tape them now, but I still use them. So bad habits, right? But just to show you what kind of environment I grew up in. But I wanted to transform my life because I wanted a better life than this. And so how did I get from here to now not having to duct tape my shoes? It all started with 4 lessons I'm going to share with you today. The first lesson is you have to believe before you can achieve. That same teacher who asked us to write down 3 goals, 2 weeks earlier, she asked us, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I told her, I don't want to be poor. And she said, so you want to be rich? Yes, if that is not poor, then yes, I want to be rich. And she said, how are you going to do that? And I said, well, you're the teacher. Aren't you supposed to teach me how to do this? She was not very happy with that response. But she said, you have to go to a good school and then go to a good college. And I said, what's the best college in the world? And she said, Harvard. And I said, okay, I want to go to Harvard. At the time, I'm 8 years old. I don't know what Harvard is. I don't know where Harvard is. I don't even know how to spell Harvard. But I said, I want to go to Harvard. And that started my journey. Later that year, at the time, my family, we couldn't afford how to have real TV. So at the time, so ashamed to say this, I'm being recorded, so this is probably illegal here. I liked torrenting things when I was a kid. Because I couldn't afford real TV, we had internet, so I started downloading stuff on torrent sites. And I remember going to my favorite torrent site, and I typed in Harvard. I had to figure out how to spell it. And I was like, well, maybe there's a guide or a book I can download, maybe a TV show that shows me how to go to Harvard. And immediately when I typed in Harvard, this came up. So this is Homeless to Harvard. And I immediately downloaded that movie. Sorry, Lifetime, I will pay you back somehow. So I downloaded this movie. And this movie is about a woman named Liz Murray who is homeless and her journey to getting into Harvard. I thought to myself, wow, this is amazing. If someone was homeless, could go into Harvard. I had two parents who didn't go to college, but I had two parents. Liz, no parents. I was evicted at my house multiple times, but she had no home. I was like, if she can do it, so can I. So I watched this movie not once, not twice, but 3 times just to make sure if she could do it, I could do it. And I call this my Liz Murray moment. It's the moment when you realize that if someone else can do what you want to do, why can't you? And over the years, this has been one of my favorite lessons, is if someone has achieved what I wanted to achieve, if I can see it, I can believe it. And so when I started my business, even before I started getting my first customer, I started spending time with business owners who were making $100,000 a year. $100,000 a year to me seemed like so much money. But as soon as I started hanging out with them, I was like, wait, if they can do it, I can do it. And then once I passed the $100,000, I was like, all right, well, can we hang out with people who make $1 million a year? And then I was like, wait, if they can do it, then I can do it. And nowadays, I get to hang out with people who make $1 million a day. I'll figure out how to do that too. But if they can do it, oh, I can totally do that. And that is the Liz Murray moment. What I learned many years later, so I learned this from a mentor of mine who passed away. So unfortunately, this advice, you cannot find it anywhere else. But I'm going to show you what he told me before he passed away. He said, sometimes we have these beliefs in our head that stops us from getting our goals because we think it is not possible. But these beliefs don't serve us. But he said the first step is, if you have awareness of these, you can do it. When he told me that, I went home and I thought, what beliefs do I have that are limiting me and stopping me? It's kind of like you're trying to run a race, but you're carrying a 10-kilogram bag of rice. It's hard for you to run towards your goal if you're carrying so much weight. It's not until you let go of the 10-kilogram pound of rice that you can start to run. So this takes us to lesson number 2 here, or to activity number 2, which is earlier you wrote down your goals. I want you to write down what's one thing that's stopping you. What do you believe that's not serving you? What's your 10-kilogram bag of rice? Write it down right now. Is it because you think you're too old? Is it because you think you're too young? Is it because you think you have too much time, too little time? You have too much experience, too little experience? You don't have supporters? What is it that's stopping you from doing that? And just write it down real quick. Now, as you're writing it down, I want you to look down at it. How many of you actually believe what you just wrote down? Like, this is 100% true. Any people believe that? It's okay if you guys believe it. All right. No one believes that their belief is true. That's good, that's good, that's good. And for those of you who still believe it, don't worry. In a couple of minutes, I'm going to talk to you about how you can unbelieve that and let go of that heavy, heavy, heavy bag of rice. So that's lesson number 1. You have to believe before you can achieve. Because if you don't believe that you can do it, you're not going to do it. Lesson number 2. If it is to be, it is up to me. All right, if it's to be, it's up to who? Yes, it is up to each and every one of you, not me, you. So, after I had my Liz Murray moment, and I thought, I too can go to Harvard, I still needed to do the work. And I realized that I needed to figure out how to actually take the steps every single day. And so when I turned 13, I learned the next lesson. So this took me 5 years afterwards. For my birthday, my grandma gave me $20, and I went on eBay and I bought a poster of Harvard University. I finally learned how to spell Harvard. This poster, I hung it on my wall. It was right next to me. So it became the first thing when I wake up, Harvard. When I go to bed, Harvard. And I dreamt about it. I dreamt about it all night long. In fact, this poster was so important to me that whenever my family had to move because we couldn't pay the rent, we got evicted, our house was being sold, whatever it was, this was the first thing I took. I took this before I took my books, before I took my shoes, before my clothes, before my backpack, every single thing. This was the most important thing that I owned. And everywhere we went, I would duct tape this, same duct tape as my shoes, and I would duct tape it on my wall because this is how important it was to me. I didn't care how damaged it was, I'm taking this thing with me. And along the way, I needed to start finally working towards getting into Harvard. And I realized getting to Harvard, there's really two big things you have to do. One, you have to get the test scores. And two, you have to pay for it. Paying for it, let's talk about that first. In case anyone's not aware, going to Harvard costs $250,000. $250,000. That is $250,000. In case that is out of perspective for you, that is enough for you to buy 130,716 pieces of G pie. To put that in perspective, that is enough G pie for you to eat G pie 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, for the next 159 years out of your life. I love G pie, but I wanted to go to Harvard more. So I needed to figure out, okay, how do I get $250,000 here? And so I learned about these things called scholarships. All you do is you apply to these foundations, and if they like your application, they give you money. If they don't like you, they reject you. And so I made this list of scholarships I would apply to, over 200 of them. And I just started applying to them. I was like, well, worst case, I get 0. Best case, I go to Harvard. You guys want to know the first scholarship I applied to? Women entering technology. They rejected me. But when that rejection came, I took the rejection letter in the mail, hung it on my wall, I duct taped it on my wall, and it became a reminder that I didn't die. Let's keep applying. And so the next one I applied to also rejected me. Next 10 I applied to also rejected me. Next 30 also rejected me. I was like, well, I have 170 more on this list. Let's keep going. And eventually, I started winning. The first one I ever won was $150. That's not a lot of GPI, but $150. And I started winning more. Some were $200, $500, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, $50,000. One was $100,000. But eventually, when it all added up, I had more than $1 million that I could use to get into Harvard or Yale or any school that I would go to. But don't worry, before you think I put it in my bank, you cannot put it in your bank account. It has to go to the school. So now I have the money to go. I need to get in. So let's talk about how I got in. But first, if it is to be, it is up to me. Lesson 3 I learned as I was trying to get my test scores to match Harvard. For others to assist, you have to persist. I mentioned the second part was getting the money. But the first part is you have to actually get the test score. So at the time when I applied, you needed to take something called the SAT. And the SAT is this test that you take. It's out of 2,400 points. To give you a little bit of perspective, the average SAT score out of 2,400 is 1,500. My school average was 900. Harvard average was 2,250. I had 1,600. So I needed to get 650 more points. And I have about 6 months to do this. And I thought to myself, okay, how do I do this? So I go back to my favorite tool, if you haven't realized. I go to Google and I type in how to get a perfect score on the SAT. And I found this forum of all these students and all these parents who would post their perfect scores, and it was like a way for them to brag about it. And so I would just message them and I'd say, congratulations, Emily, on your perfect score. How'd you do it? Sonia, congratulations on your daughter getting your perfect score. How'd she do it? And people started telling me how they did it. They said, oh, that's easy. You just pay for this private tutor. You just pay for this school. It's only $3,000 a month. It's only $4,000 a month. It's only $8,000 a month. I was like, wow, that is money I don't have. And so I said, okay, so could you just send me the books that your daughter uses? Emily, could you send me the books that you use? Jason, could you send me the books that you used? And they started sending me the books that they used to prepare for the SATs. And so then I would call my library and I said, hey, do we have these books? And the library said, bad news, we don't have these books. Good news, we can ship them here, but because we're borrowing from another library, you have to return them every 2 weeks and you have to wait. I was like, well, that's better than nothing. Get the books for me. And this was summer, so there was no school bus running. And this was before I had a car. So to go to the library, I had to walk 2.5 miles one way to get to the library. And for those of you who are in kilometers, that is 4 kilometers. So I had to walk 4 kilometers. And remember, my neighborhood is very dangerous. So you have to do this during the sunlight. So at night, you do not want to be in this neighborhood. And so I would walk to myself about an hour to the library, get the books, walk an hour back. And then I would do this every 2 weeks because they had to return the books. And for some of you thinking, hey, Davis, did you ever get a bike? It's like, yes, twice. Both times got stolen. So my duct tape shoes had to hold me up. And so I would walk here and I would get these books. And do I hate walking? Nowadays I love walking, but back then I hated walking. And I thought to myself, but no, you know what? This is literally one step closer to Harvard, one step closer. And if I needed to, I would duct tape my shoes, get me one step closer, one step closer, one step closer. And I would do this every single 2 weeks. But the problem was when I started studying on my own, my test scores only went up by 10 points about every single week. So it went from 1600 to 1610, 1620. And I did the math. I was like, wait, this is going to take me like 65 weeks. I don't have 65 weeks. I needed help. And so I emailed my teacher. I emailed 2 teachers. I emailed my English teacher and explained that some of the English questions were really hard. I explained it to my math teacher. I said, some of these are really hard. And they both said to me, Davis, when the school year starts, let's see if we can help you. My English teacher said, I have to be home in the afternoons to be with my wife, so I can't help you. But if you can get to school an hour before school starts at 6 a.m., I will help you. My math teacher said, well, I have wrestling practice after school, but if you don't mind studying at 5 o'clock, I have until 6 o'clock before my wife picks me up, and I can help you with the math. And I said, deal, deal. So when the school year start, I would be at school at 6 a.m., and there would be only 3 people. My English teacher, me, and Mr. Lee, the janitor who let us in. Then the school year would go. I would go do my classes. Afternoon, I would do my homework and do some extracurriculars. And then 5 o'clock happened. My math teacher's done with wrestling practice, goes into the class, and we would do the math portion together. And then we would be the last 3 in the school most days. It would be me, my math teacher, and Mr. Lee, the janitor who closed out. Mr. Lee definitely was underpaid for staying there. But eventually, with the help of my math teacher, my English teachers, my scores started rising a lot faster. Instead of 10 points a week, it started being 15 points a week, then 20, 25, 30. And eventually, I would get my 2,250. But in order to get there, I needed a lot of people to help me. I needed those students who gave me the books. I needed the librarians who helped me find the books. I needed my math teacher to be there. I needed my English teacher to be there. I needed my janitor to have a reason to get to school early and to close the school late. But when they saw that I was doing this on my own, they were willing to help. And that's the lesson I learned. And then March came, and March is the favorite time of high school students because that's when the university scores came out. And I remember going home, checking my email, I just hitting refresh every 5 seconds I can. And the first one that came in was Princeton. Princeton said, sorry. Then Columbia, sorry. University of Pennsylvania, sorry. Stanford, sorry. MIT, sorry. I was like, wow, this is gonna suck for me. Oh man, all this work. Ooh, that's tough. But then Harvard came, and Harvard said, congratulations. We'd like to welcome you into our upcoming class. And I remember calling my teachers, calling my principals, calling my parents. When I called my parents, my grandparents, they were like, Harvard? What is that? But my teachers were pretty proud of me. And that became the start of everything. So yes, I did eventually get into Harvard, get into Yale, and get into other universities as well. And it felt like it paid off. And at the time, I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is what I worked for. But I had to believe all those other things to change my mind, right? And so earlier, you wrote down, what is your goal? What's your limiting belief that's stopping you from achieving the goals? Now I want to take a minute for you to write down, what do you have to believe that's going to help you get to that goal? Like, take a minute, write it down. If you still believe that what you wrote down earlier is stopping you, you're too old, you're too young, write down, what do you have to believe instead to be true? For me, I had to believe that I could do it. I had to believe that there was a way to do it. I had to believe that I had time. I had to believe that if I couldn't do it myself, there were others to help me. Just take a minute, just write that down. You guys can write it down over here too. I remember my favorite moment when that Harvard letter came in the mail officially. I took it on the wall next to all the rejections. I duct taped it right on there next to my poster. It was my favorite thing at the time. I duct taped until later on. I'll tell you a couple more. But yes, my wall was filled with duct tape at this point. All right, you guys, 20 more seconds to wrap up your thoughts. All right. So now we learned that the third lesson is that for others to assist, you have to persist. But the most important lesson I didn't learn until after I got into Harvard. It was this. My success isn't mine, it's a sign for others to shine. There's a reason why the theme of today's event is shining your light. And it's this. I've come to realize that sometimes we look at our goals and we think we're not worthy enough to accomplish this goal. Who am I to go after this goal? Why am I so special? Why should I even have this goal? And it wasn't until I got into Harvard that every single year when I came back home for Christmas break, my community would invite me to give a talk to the students there. And I would talk about my journey. I would talk about the summers I gave up with my friends to study. I would talk about how cold it was to be at the school at 6 a.m. and how dark it was at 6 p.m. Talk about all of that. But what I didn't realize was that what I was doing was I was allowing others to shine. Every single year since I gave that first talk, at least one student from my community has gone to an Ivy League school. Previously, there was zero. Again, they did the work. I just happened to be there. And I come to realize that over the years, these students would say, hey, Davis, my teacher told me about you. Or, hey, Davis, I heard this speech you gave when I was in middle school. And I realized that what Liz Murray was for me all those years ago, I was able to become for these people here. And so the third goal that I wanted to accomplish, the third goal that I wrote down that day when our third grade teacher asked me was, goal number one was I wanted to be an owner of a multi-million-dollar company and to pay for my team to go on a retreat. The second goal was I wanted to get into Harvard. But the third goal I wrote down was I wanted to be an inspiration for other people. And so when my business started, I wanted to be that inspiration for other people. And so one of the greatest things in my life that I've done is every single year, we've grown it now, but a few years ago, it was just 2 scholarships that I would give out to help students be the first in their family to go to college. One for a student and one for a teacher to spend on their students. And guess what? The 2 scholarships are not named after me. They're named after the 2 teachers who helped me. And eventually we'd have a third one with the janitor, but that's another side story. But it's no longer about you. And I realized that every single goal that I've set for myself, it's not about me, but it's about others who can lead the path and those whose lives are made better because of it. And so that's the fourth lesson here. Is for those of you who don't think that your goal is worthy enough, that you don't have a motivation, remember that your success isn't about you, it's about other people. Because the lesson here is my success isn't mine, it is a sign for others to shine. And that's the four lessons I've learned over the years, which is you have to believe that it can be done. You have to believe before you can achieve. Second, you have to be willing to work for it, which is if it's up to be, it's up to me. Third, in order for others to assist, you have to persist. And fourth, your success isn't yours, it's for others to shine. So in summary, I come to realize that it is my goals can be done, it will be done, and it should be done. Can be done, will be done, should be done. And of course, I love the fact that some of you are feeling inspired right now. If you want more inspiration about it, it's not just for today. One of the things that I love doing is I love sharing the path because it helps others impact other people's lives as well. And so one of the things I set up is a free newsletter. If you feel like you're on your own on your go, you can subscribe to the letter. It's completely free. I have nothing to sell you except for the idea that you can be a better version of yourself and someone else in this lifetime can impact from that. And this is my way of continuing to give back in terms of making sure that some of you are inspired. As you think about the ways that you can inspire others, it doesn't have to be monetary, it doesn't have to be a newsletter. Just think about what can you, achieving your goal, do for other people who believe that they can't do it. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to do that. By the way, that's just one of two gifts I'm giving you today. There's going to be a second gift as well. So once you guys are done with your phones, when you look up it, I will know that you guys have locked in, and I'm going to talk about one other thing I want to make sure that you leave today with. All right, looks like most people have put their hands up, which is great. I think a lot about this photo. This photo of when I was young, when I couldn't afford a proper pair of shoes. And I think about how powerful it was to have that duct tape. Because no matter how broken I felt, no matter how broken my shoe was, it reminded me that with enough duct tape, I can continue on for just one more day. And one more day means I'm one step closer to whatever goal that I'm setting towards. In fact, sometimes on important days, I still carry a little piece of duct tape with me, with it, because it reminds me that through tough times, if I can make it for just one more day, I get one more day closer. And so, I don't want you to forget about today, it goes away and it's all information. I want transformation. And so, I want to give you something. Somewhere next to you in your seat, there should be something that looks a little bit like this. When you grab it, could you stand up, please? Make sure that way I know. If you have it, stand up. If you found it, stand up. If you can't find it, it means someone stole it from you. So we'll get you a second one. It should be somewhere in your seat. Okay, we're playing some... All right. There should be enough for everyone. All right, all right. And for those of you who can't find it, we'll give it. You guys can stand up. I'll make sure everyone has one before the end of the day. All right. So this tape was very important to me because every rejection, every shoe, every acceptance, I would nail it on my wall. Now I want you to have a piece of this because remember, your goals, they can be done, they will be done, and they should be done, right? So let's say it together. My goals can be done, will be done, and should be done. Thank you.
Woo! Give another big round of applause to our keynote speaker, David.